I'm supposed to talk about working together. Yeah, I know. So it's about individuality or something like that. I'm LB, or you can make up my name. It's okay. I had learned a few years back that in New York State you can legally use whatever name you want, whenever, as long as it's not for fraudulent purposes. So actually, I was at the voting line and my husband's teasing me, being like, do you remember what name you registered with? I'm like, yes, I know which one it's under. So anyways, last week I was in Toronto. Great custom story, if anybody's got time afterwards. This is not part of this talk. I am one of those formally educated people from Rochester. And then I went on to Universal Instruments, which was your typical old school thing, like that job your father had, where he went with the briefcase with his brown bag lunch in there, and, it was, well, I'm a peon, so I can only take vacation when my boss says I'm able to. And then I went on to Google, and that's what dragged me to New York City, because, who says no when you're, like, in your early 20s to going to a big, fancy company? It's kind of resume writing, right? And then I went off to Etsy, because, it's always fun to try out new things, right? And so last week they had asked me to talk about testing and DevOps and culture, because that's what I had been doing at Etsy for like the past couple of years. The company had been like, we're really big about this idea of culture, how we act, and what we're doing. And so I wanted to, bring some of that in. And I started with talking about my first real job. Because, lifeguarding, administrative assistants in college, those don't count as real jobs, right? That's what everybody says. Or at least when you go to the old school places, they're like, yes, you learned from a textbook that you should only have 25 lines per code per method, but in the real world, it's just like, dude, really, whatever. You just got old stuff, I'm sorry. You have MFC. So I was working on this like surface mount equipment. So does anybody in this room know what surface mount equipment is?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's really freaking cool to watch. It's a Xerox copier for a circuit board. And who knows how many pounds of force a machine head must have to lay down an RJ45 jack. 40 pounds. Odd thing. That was one of our new products at the time that I was there. I got to work on optimizers and line balancers, which was the entire thing of, if you can tell us what machines you have, what types of feeders, so like these tape reels that got component pockets in there, and what types of nozzles you have. I was supposed to write the software that told you, well, if you lay them out like this, in this order, for this board, that will be the fastest way to assemble your board. Or, in the line balancer sense, keep the line moving along because you need faster at the end. Well, slower at the beginning and faster at the end in order to move through production assembly. But anyways, I brought it up because it's kind of interesting looking at DevOps from the perspective of old companies, despite that not being where it came from. And so I had gone over like the software engineers being people who wrote code and played Counter-Strike during their lunch breaks. We even had the soundbite of the "You are an idiot, ha ha ha," and that was my like thing that stuck in my head from all those years. You had your sysadmins, the big old grumpy mans in the chair, being like, "Can't do that." Sorry. And I'm being stereotypical. Yeah. I've worked in all of these areas, so I have respect for all of you, but we all have our wonderful stereotypes. The poor little QA analyst that's just looking at the freaking tickets and doing the manual test and subject to waiting for the nightly bill to come, subject to, going through these bugs and then being like, I'm sorry, but your code doesn't work. They're meek about it because they're terrified and they just get no respect. And then we even had the source control management team, the person who decided exactly how you were going to get access to your code. What version were we on? What CD were we currently burning? And to me, that is a great story for why you would want DevOps. Right? Because in the end, everybody has their own little silo, their own little world, and everybody has a different version of no or intimidation to the other group. But honestly, if you went and talked to each other, you'd have a much more productive life, because you would make sure that that nightly build actually got billed in time, instead of waiting until lunchtime to find out it didn't get made, and then you don't have it until the next day. You would be able to consolidate how many branches of code you have to check out and how many times you have to rewrite the code in different versions. Because you need a patch for the old version and you need the new one. And your QA people might actually find better bugs and be able to report things more efficiently, so you spend less time on it instead of not. And it was really cute, because I know that the t-shirts that everybody has out for DevOps these days are only like the 2-circle Venn diagram, but actually the Wikipedia is like the 3. And sometimes I've said that, you know, I'm not completely sure why you have the quality assurance separate, because we should all want to have high quality, right? I mean, don't you want to do something that you're proud about and keep that in check? Oh, and I left out that slide. I don't have my speaker notes because, you know, I don't know how to work this laptop. And I'm at a tech conference talking to you. So, anyways, it was actually funny reading that the real story was Flickr just wanted to get 10 builds out a day. And that was why they came up with DevOps, and it was just them surrendering control of deployment. Which is cool, but I like my story better. I like the idea of, come on, you guys gotta, you know, work together. And that's from the technical perspective. But, you know, over my years, I have made lots of mistakes. And all of us have made lots of mistakes that have just shot ourselves in the foot. And it affects us as an individual. It affects how we view the future and what we're going to do. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that. And, I mean, teams in general, they're good. Collaboration, somebody to learn from, somebody to talk to, and it can be comforting. But, you know, you can also end up hiding behind people. You can end up making an ass of yourself inappropriately and being stuck with that for the rest of your time there. Or you could just, you know, completely surrender who you are as a person and turn it into a job and be sad, you know? So, I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities. And so I came up with, I decided to get to 10 things because I'm so close to the number 10, and that just sounded cool. So, you know, maybe some of these things overlap. And I have to warn, you know, when I was learning most of these lessons, I was definitely like in tears, like, no, I can't possibly be that bad. I was that bad. I probably still am that bad. And sometimes it's really hard to, you know, look at what you do on a regular basis and realize, yeah, I probably shouldn't be doing that. I would be better off if I framed it a little differently. So, I apologize, but we're here, we can talk, you know, so don't, you know, bring my head around on a stick, thank you. So, first thing, knowing your priorities, and this was number 1, in my opinion. This is the most important. So even if we don't get to the other 9 things, that's okay, because knowing your priorities is the absolute most important thing. It is knowing what is important to you. It is knowing what that order is of what's important to you. Recently, I've been on a female developers mailing list, and it's equal parts like gnawing and equal parts okay that I see these things about, I'm starting this new job and I told them I'm a parent and I have to pick up my kid. What do I do? It's like, you already told them you have to pick up your kid. That's important to you. It is very important to you that you are out at 5 p.m. to pick up your kid. And that's okay. Because as long as you make it known, and I mean, you don't go and you like stomp on somebody's desk and you'll like, I have to be out at 5 p.m. Like, you don't do it like that. You're just like, hey, just want to remind you, I have to be out at 5 p.m. I have to go pick up Charlie. It's like, okay. And it's a good thing to put out there in the first place because you are now predictable. And people are happy with you being predictable. And so that's what priorities really will do for you. It will work on you being happy with what's going on. It will help you keep in perspective when you're going down the wrong path. And it will make other people happy that they know that if you get a phone call in the middle of the day and it's so-and-so is sick, it's your mother's sick, and it's very important that you're there to take care of her for a couple weeks, chances are your employer's going to work around that. And they're going to respect you because they know that you are keeping your priorities in check. Now, sometimes it's not family. Some of us really have a priority about our career. Like, it is really important to us to move forward in our career. But that means that you're probably going to have to sacrifice something else. And I'm so sorry that I had missed what Jennifer had said yesterday with her whole 3 things and pick 2. But she's really right. There's only so many things you can have, but as long as you keep the priorities in check, you're going to optimize on the top thing. And if that last thing falls behind, well, it wasn't your top priority. Don't limit yourself. Now, this is a question that comes up in interviews. It comes from your boss. It comes from your coworkers. It's, have you done X before? Now, it's not, can you do X? And the question is, how do you answer this? Well, sadly, I've seen too many people limiting themselves by being like, with the yes or the no. Them framing it as in, no, I literally have to listen to the question is, have I done it? All of the successful people that I've ever seen, the people who are moving forward, they say, I can do that. They just change the question to a question of whether or not they can, not to a question of whether they have or have not. And it's an important thing to just go for it, to try it. And most of the times, these are silly things. Like, recently I switched over to ops, and they're like, have you built a machine with cobbler before? And it was like, no, I can do it, you know, whatever. And so I'm there struggling, and it's fine. But, you know, everybody's really excited that you're going out and trying to do it, rather than just being like, no, I haven't done it. Because, you know what happens? Then they go to the next guy and ask him, have you done this before? And they go, I can, and now they got the task to show up, the rest of you. So don't limit yourself. I mean, this also even goes back to like the entire stereotype thread. Like, to people thinking, oh, I'm a girl, my brain's 1/7 the size of a man. That's a joke. Sorry. You know, and that entire whole theory, like, if the girls are in a school with everyone doing math, you know, they feel like they can do it. But if they're in a school where everybody's like, well, boys are much better at math, some of us limit ourselves. And it's a terrible thing to do. Just frame things as, I can do it. And if you fail, who cares? You know, at least you're going to learn something from it. You may even learn that it's impossible to do, so that's fine. Another thing is, over-communicate. Really over-communicate. You are not the only person reporting to your manager. And think of how much you know about exactly what your coworkers are doing every minute of the day. Do you know what your coworkers are doing every single minute of the day? No. Do you know what you're doing every single minute of the day? Yes, you're stuck with yourself. Of course you know what you're doing every single minute of the day. But your coworkers don't. Your manager, there's no way he can know what everybody is doing. He's busy keeping track of himself and the overall vision of the team, and he's also busy getting shit from the guy above him. Also, if you're in a big enough company, there's many, many teams. You, over-communicating, sharing with everybody, having that coffee break, having that water cooler talk with somebody, putting it on emails, putting it in IRC, putting it everywhere, basically putting your stamp everywhere. Yeah, sometimes it seems like you're a jerk for doing that, but really it's helping people out. Because now they can be like, oh, I know so-and-so's working on this. I can totally, you know, like, work with them on that, or I can get their help on this thing that now I'm working on. It also helps with your manager being able to report how successful the group is doing. Your manager gets graded based on how the group performs as a whole. And so if they can find out from everybody easily what's going on, now they can go talk to the high-ups, they can share with all the other teams, and now all the other teams know, and now when it comes to that time where they're like divvying up the budget for the performance reviews, you might get a bigger bucket. And that's awesome. So, really, remember, you're not the only one. You're the only one that knows everything you're doing. You have to share it. don't take it personally. This was an interesting one. I was actually arguing with my husband about this one because he was like, have a thick skin. And I was like, that doesn't exactly sound like it. And he's like, wait a minute, have we been talking about the wrong thing all this time? And so I was like, well, you know, it's really quite possible for you to listen to people about negative things. Somebody telling you something negative, and to like put on a good face. But deep down, you're still like going home and crying about so-and-so doesn't like me. But the honest truth is, it's almost always not about you. Really. Most people, their anger and their negativity in the workplace is something about them, themselves. And it's usually not about you specifically. And, I mean, of course, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you shouldn't be. I mean, just because, you know, something is coming across, you know, personally doesn't mean, you know, it is. And just because you know to not take things personally doesn't mean you shouldn't sometimes. So there are, of course, exceptions. You know, but just remember, there's a difference between you as a person and what you produce. Like, there is an absolute difference. Most things are about, like, the work. If somebody is coming and being like, I can't believe you did this, most times it's not because they think there is a failing with you as a human being. It's literally what you did was not the correct thing to do at that time. But you can make that up. It's just one thing. It's one event. Compete with everyone. This one I had a really hard time saying. Because I get scared that, you know, maybe I'm being sexist or racist or something on this one. But oftentimes what I've seen, and actually I was talking with one friend, she had read a book about jealousy. And about how there is like this old caveman habit of like women trying to be the leader of the tribe. And basically getting rid of all the other women. And sometimes that happens in the workplace. Sometimes you have this urge of being like, so-and-so's prettier than me, and you're like upset that all the guys are paying more attention to her, you know? But it can work in any sort of group. Even with junior programmers. Junior programmers will often be like, well, I'm a junior programmer, so I have to be, you know, better than the other junior programmers. But that's a terrible standard. You should want to be the best in your group. You know? You should really be trying to be the best overall. And if you don't want to frame it as in competition, you need to be the best for yourself. How good do you want to be? And the thing is, some people, they don't want to compete. That's fine. But, going back to knowing your priorities, if you want to be like the best in your group, you want to get promotions, you want career, if that's really important to you, you need to compete with everybody. Period. Take responsibility. Ooh. You have to take responsibility for your successes and your failures. Taking responsibility for your failures is good. I mean, I was talking to Laura yesterday about taking responsibility for failures, and she had a good point that it's, you know, you can control yourself. You can control, if it's in your control, you can take care of it, and that's awesome. But if you're busy pointing a finger at somebody else, you have now relinquished control of fixing what the problem is. The other thing is, you can only throw so many people under the bus before you get thrown under the bus. Okay? So, it's much better to take blame for it. And if you're really working with people that are like, you screw up all the time, you keep taking responsibility for all the stupid stuff we do, oh well, you're probably working with jerks. So you should probably stop working with them. Learn to speak the lingo. And of course, I'm probably getting in trouble right now because I don't know everybody here. I don't know exactly how you talk about things. But this is, professionally, personally, is an important thing to know. I had recently switched from doing dev, like product dev, then over to working on like the QA and the infrastructure stuff, and then going over to ops. And each team has a different way about talking about things. The other thing is I had gone from like a company that was big on hiring computer scientists, Aspergery computer scientists, that want to talk about design patterns. They want to talk about having a period at the end of every single comment block. They want to have all of these fine rules defined, and they want to talk that way. But then I went to another one, which was a startup, and most of the people were, just learning programming on their own and had like wandered into the profession by accident practically. And you mention a design pattern and it upsets them. And that's okay, because you just need to realize that, and you need to figure out how to word things, because otherwise you talk to the guy that doesn't know the design patterns or doesn't want to talk about the design patterns, and now they think you're an asshole. So you have to learn how the people you are working with speak, how they talk about things, because it's going to save you from looking like a dick. And that kind of feeds into an individual's truth trumps reality. If the person you're talking to thinks what you just said is the most offensive thing ever, in their reality, it is the most offensive thing ever. And you can hope that they are, tolerant enough to talk to you about it, and you can try to get better wording on this, try to work through that your goal wasn't offending. But until they finally realize that you weren't trying to be offensive, you're offensive. And so it's very important that you take that into consideration when talking to people. You try to take time to find out how they are viewing the situation. Everybody's view is a little bit different. For some people, they think, oh, it is really important that the project has X in it. This is the most important thing ever. But maybe they just don't have a full view of what the entire picture is. And you can't just go up to them and be like, no, that is the dumbest idea ever. Because to them, it is the most important idea ever. And so if you want to work through with these people, you're going to have to try to figure out, why is it important? Is any portion of it actually important? Can you get other people on board with thinking it's important? Or is there a way that you can show it to them to show them that you're not calling them stupid, you're not calling them dumb, because they're not, they just have a different viewpoint, and how to switch that into, well, this is why it's not a good idea.
Oh, actually, I have one key phrase that actually works really, really well when you're dealing with that, especially if it's something where you're like, okay, you're a newbie, you don't know how this works, and they're definitely like this, and you think like, oh, let's put images in the database, that's a good idea.
Right.
And you laugh, but there are some times where it's actually useful to do that. So what I do is I'll ask, oh, that's a great idea, how do you get past X and Y? How do you get past the fact that the backups will now be big or whatever? And then in that case, if they are like the 1% of the case where it's right, you don't look like a jerk. And if they're not, then you just help them think about a problem they never thought about again.
Yes.
Before.
So it's that wonderful questioning.
Yeah.
The entire thing. Like, let's actually sit down and have a conversation about it. Because coming with direct statements,
Right.
That's kind of
constructive criticism.
Yeah, well constructive criticism doesn't even work half the time either with people.
Well,
I call it coming from a place where you assume that they know what they're doing, right?
Yes.
Even though in your brain you're like, oh man, stupid noob or whatever, because we're thinking that, that it's okay to think that. That's what we think. It's we can't necessarily control the thoughts that pop in our head. But what you're basically saying is, I respect you. I think you're smart. That's a great idea, but you must have come up with some way to fix this obvious thing that everybody knows about, right? I mean, you're not saying it in that kind of sarcastic of a way, but you're basically saying, I'm coming from a place, instead of coming from a place where, gosh, you're new and dumb and don't know what you're doing, you're coming from a place with, that's a great idea, it's a really smart idea. In the past when I've tried to do it, I've come across X roadblock and Y roadblock. How does your plan get past that? You're starting to basically say, okay, we're on the same level here. You've got an idea, I respect that idea, but...
You're basically empowering them to be at your level or above. Which, who doesn't want to sound like they're awesome and feel like everyone thinks they're awesome, right? Another thing, be professionally passionate. that means you may have the greatest idea ever. It may also be crap. But you have to, and it's good to be excited about what you're doing. Like, if you're not excited about what you're doing, reevaluate your priorities list. Is this just low enough on the totem pole and you're just, grabbing your paycheck that's worth it to just, go with it. But otherwise, you kind of want to be excited about what you're doing. And the thing is to not make it look like you're being so emotional about it. I'm sure we've all seen the person who stomped their fist on the table, broke down into tears, and we're like, but it has to be like this. And so, from your perspective, try not to go into the, crying for it, screaming for it, whatever. Try to assert yourself, and if they're not getting it, think about how you can change it. How can you change their perspective to buy into it? And keep having that conversation, because maybe they'll actually turn around and they'll give you enough of the viewpoint back, like we were saying earlier, to tell you why it was not a very good idea. But you get too emotional and everybody's just like, oh, yeah, that guy. And everybody's got that guy who is always belligerent about everything. And basically everybody goes and saves their own face, listens to him, and then goes and does something else. And that's not very nice either. And you don't want to be the belligerent guy that everybody is pretending to listen to, and then you find out later on they weren't ever listening. So finally, take time to reassess how work affects your life. And I mean, this kind of goes back to your priorities. How is it affecting your life? Is it getting you to where you want to be tomorrow? Are you waking up in the morning and excited to go to work? Are you dreading work? Is it just work and then you're thinking about going to skee ball afterwards and that's awesome? And there's nothing wrong with the whole, I get up, I go to work, and then I go and do my fun things at night. That's fine. If that's the way you want life to be, awesome. The important part is to make sure that you are happy with what's going on. That if you are not completely happy with what's going on, you can think of a way to make yourself happier. And just changing little things. Think about, is work inhibiting your life goals? Does the mission, direction of the company, team, whatever, still mesh with what you're doing? Or are you just enjoying the flow? So, I mean, those were the 10 things. I don't think I have anything else. But I mean, all this goes back to being happy, having your priorities, and keeping those priorities are going to keep you happy in the long run. And they're just going to make your coworkers want to work with you, or be better off working with you, because they're going to know exactly how you're going to go on issues, how to deal with you, and it's good stuff. So, anyways, any comments, questions, stories? I want a story. I want a story.
Not really.
Damn it!
Sorry. I found something, because I'm old now, so...
No, you're not.
I've learned is...
You turned 16, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool. I know. No, it's interesting, as your life changes, your priorities change too, and what was working for you maybe in your 20s at the job that you're at, or the situation you found yourself in was great, but then, it's just a slow shift, and you wake up one day and you realize that you're not anywhere, where you need to be or want to be, and so it's important to periodically, I think, take a look at that.
Yeah.
How am I changing? How is my life changing? Are the things that were important to me in my 20s still important to me now?
They're probably not.
Yeah. I mean, probably not. Yeah, most people do kind of evolve, I guess. So
yeah.
Some people may not. I don't know, but but it's to really take a look at your work environment, because your work environment may be the same and it may have been fine even a couple years ago, but
it may not be good now.
It may not be the same, and that's okay. That's totally fine. That's natural progression of life. So,
yeah.
I don't know, it's just something that I found was interesting. I changed. Other things may not, but I may not.
Definitely. Yes.
So this isn't about a day job kind of thing, but it was really about a project I did for a long time. This microblowing client called Spaz.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said about how it's affecting your life kind of reminded me of something where I ended up having to sort of step down from the project and say, I can't do this anymore. And what it had always been sometimes a really, really rewarding and sometimes stressful. But it got to a point, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, where I was so frustrated with how just everything was going with the ecosystem we had built it in, how it basically got flushed down the toilet. And I was losing my shit with my family. Like, I was stressed out and yelling at people and pissed off all the time, and I kind of had this big blow up. And then my wife had to sit me down and say, you gotta, you can't keep doing this.
Oh, definitely.
And I was like, yeah, you're right, I can't keep doing this. And I was like, and I told people who were working on it, I said, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop. And I just had to, right?
Yeah.
I've been lucky in that I haven't had too many day jobs that were like that. I've had one that was kind of unpleasant, but it got ended by, by outside factors. But I think that...
Oh, we all have those, right?
Yeah, right. No, they were right about that. But it's something to, you really when you really invest yourself in something, whether it be something that you're getting paid and that's what your sort of career-oriented stuff is, or whether it's some other project that you talk about, contributing open source projects or whatever, you really have to be conscious about and constantly assess, is this actually making me happy or not? And how is this, am I a happier person? Am I a healthier person because of that? Because happiness and healthiness are really directly tied to each other, and I think...
How much hair did you lose?
Not a lot, but I know I had high blood pressure from it, and I mean, that, you don't think about it when you're younger, but when you have a wife and kid or kids, the stress level and how it can affect your health becomes much more serious. So yeah, it's something you have to take really seriously because you do shit you have to do to take care of your family or to eat or just do things like that. But if it's making you fundamentally unhappy, that's a really bad situation.
Definitely.
Yeah,
is your job is how much of your week? How much of your week is taken up? How many hours are you spending with people that aren't even your family? And it's important that you're good to your family, unless of course you hate your family. Well, then they're making you unhappy. You should leave them. But
one of the things on there is prioritize. For me, is once I leave the office, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I think our team is like that too. When I was looking for a new job, that was one of the things I really wanted. And I'm in the process of hiring people right now. And I'm wondering how you've dealt with people that want to stay. If your team, like I'm afraid to get somebody in that's just will not leave. It's always, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering,
you want to answer?
If you're that type of person, how do you feel about working with the people who are done when they leave? That type of thing.
One thing is, I try to encourage everybody when they're interviewing to remember that an interview is two ways.
Oh, yeah.
There's the person who's interviewing you to see if you're going to fit in with their company because they know how their company is, and it's you trying to figure out if they can actually tell you about the company, if they're somebody you want to work with, do you want to spend time with. And so, the big thing is you just got to really be upfront with what your culture is. Be like, listen, we are mostly family-oriented people. We like working our 9-to-5 shift. Or whatever, we like working our 9-to-5 shift because we are training for marathons all the time, and so we need that much time to go running, and that's fine. And so that's really, you making your priorities known when you're talking to somebody. Get them into that conversation. See if they're actually the same type of person as you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just want to jump in too. I think I've done some recruiting and interviewing in the past, but I would say too, another thing is before you even get that far, like even as a screener interview, you can ask them, tell me about your work style, right? Have them be more broad and open-ended so that they can't sort of game the question. And later you can do exactly what you said maybe in a second interview, but that way you won't even get them in the door. So if they start talking about how they love to work all hours of night, they work from 9 to 5 and go home and then they work until 1 in the morning, then that gives you some sort of sense. So you might want to ask them that question right up front as a screener interview for your HR, or if you're doing it, whoever, the hiring manager, and then do what Elsie said.
Laura, you want to add anything on top?
So, I had to talk about like not working too hard with like half the people on my team. And
Stop working.
this is actually where it's good to like, I've been doing this for a long time, because it's like, I have been doing this for 24 years. And the reason I've been doing it for 24 years is you have to pace yourself, right? Like, you can't make everything today. You want to like not burn out and hate yourself. And it's a marathon, not a sprint, and go home.
Yeah.
And you have to actually acknowledge the people. Like, I have the guy I was talking about that's always like, I should do more. You know, I'm pretty obsessive about like monitoring bug mail and stuff. I'm like, I noticed that you were answering your bug mail for 48 hours straight. Go home, take a day off.
Yeah.
And like forcing people to take time off. Like,
Oh yeah.
say you worked all weekend on this thing. I want you to take Monday, Tuesday off, or you can take 2 other days this week. If Monday, Tuesday don't work for you, but you need to take 2 days.
And if I see you online,
Yeah. If you're online, we're all going to
I'm revoking your access for 2 days.
Pretty much anytime anyone is in the calendar for having paid time off and they're online, we're like, what are you doing? It's your day off.
So there's also there's a flip side to this, at least in the Mozilla culture, where like I manage this guy and it's a full-time job. But he's
he also manages me, by the way.
he's time shifted. He's
Right.
in Singapore, so I know very well when. I mean, and I'm here in Indiana, so we're exactly 12 hours off. So I know very well when it's 4 in the afternoon, that it's 4 a.m. for him, and he's still out working. And so there's the trade-off of like burnout and not wanting to work him too hard. But then there's also the aspect that I know personally where, okay, I'm working, but then I'm off work, and what would I be doing in my off time? I would be contributing to an open source project, and this is an open source project that I'm having fun contributing to. It just also happens to be work, so I'm working a little bit more. So I'm all for not burning people out, and I don't want to burn people out. But then there are some people who actually have fun and enjoy.
Yeah, they're completely
doing
Aspie
it.
like this guy and
Yeah.
has to be coding 20.
But I missed that.
See, working.
Right.
Someone was.
I really maybe we just rolled back a bit.
In my defense, someone was like Fox to Mike ++ for doing everybody else's jobs for them.
Yes,
That is why I missed your comment. I'm Fox to
because
Mike and
Uncle wasn't
IRC.
paying attention.
I will say in an interview, one of the ways that you can also kind of ask that question is to ask what their hobbies are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's legal, right? You can do
Oh
it.
yeah, totally. That's what they're
You ask like what their hobbies are, or look on their resume, they might have it, and then if they're like, I snowboard 8 hours a week or whatever, then you know that they take time, they go off work or whatever. If they travel a lot, maybe it's something where they take a week off to travel every month, but the 3 weeks that they're working, they're really crazy.
So my husband used to work for MySQL AB, and at that stage they were all remote. And one of their rules was that we will not hire you unless you have a hobby or a family, because we want you to have a life outside of work. If you're working from home, you need to do something else other than write code 20 hours a day.
Yeah, when I was in my 30s and single and working my butt off, I would have hated that. Now because I'm older and I don't mind it, but because I don't have a family and I didn't have hobbies back then. It was bad.
But and I think there's, I don't know, maybe it is, each culture is different too, but there's also the aspect of pretty much everyone, at least in the IT team here, we're pretty close. It's, just even outside of work. So if I'm hanging around with friends, well, these friends are all on IRC and they just happen to be working during the day with me, and so you will find people on PTO just on IRC, like, well, get out of here. You shouldn't be working right now. Well, I'm not working. I'm just here saying hi to my friends. So.
it's a difficult balance, especially
Oh,
when
it is.
everyone's remote.
Oh, yeah.
And I think she's right about she's right about pacing yourself. Like
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
probably pull 14-hour work days, 16-hour work days, Monday through Friday, but I will rarely be online on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's my. I
Oh,
don't even
definitely.
open the laptop. It's
Yeah.
it's shut down
Yeah.
from Friday night all the way through till Monday.
Yeah,
morning.
that's a big
So-
thing that I found that you
It
know,
helps.
I
It
literally
totally
go,
helps.
I'm closing my laptop and I close the lid and then I am off. Like I don't do
Right,
a lot
because
of
it's a pain in the ass to get that thing
Right.
to unsleep again.
well, I have to type in my password and it's no, but I mean it's it's like a physical thing that I do to be like, okay, now because when you work at home,
Yeah.
you know, what's the thing that what's your commute? Nothing. You don't have this
Exactly.
like time space continuum shift of like here I'm at work and here I'm not. You know, you have this, you know, so I literally would be like, okay, I'm closing my laptop. My husband looks at me, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not working anymore.
Yes,
I'm
that's why it's good to have family members that don't exactly do the same thing you do.
My husband will come over at 5:15 and be like, it's 5:15.
Where's my dinner? No.
Just walk in the door about, 4:30, and Tori sits down beside me and goes, "What are we having for dinner, Mom? You gotta be done." Hey, that's great.
Yeah, you're like, thank you, alarm clock.
Actually, pets can be really good too. Because my
Yeah.
dad has to need for food. It's like a giant cat will come and sit on my laptop and go meow.
Yeah, I think walking your dog is the new smoking break.
Yes.
Right? Nobody like smokes anymore, so people don't take like the smoking breaks every 2-3 hours. Now they walk the dog every 2-3 hours.
I know when I first got married, I was working out of the house. My wife wasn't.
Mhm.
And, she went away, and when she got home, I'm like, let's go do something.
Yeah.
And she just wants to sit on the couch.
Yeah.
So that balance was interesting too.
Oh yeah, the person who gets left at home, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how many people in here are single? Yeah. So single
50.
people, me too. Raise
Yeah.
my hand. It really sounds like silly. You feel like you have more time, but as a single person, I think you can do what you said, where you can just head down, work yourself. For hours and hours, and not take a break. And so it really actually takes more effort. I know, funny jokes aside about family and kids, like I have a dog, and she'll like stare at me with a death stare, like, are you leaving me now or what? And of course she does it about every hour because she's a rat. So.
Yeah.
Even if she just had a ton of food. But I think I actually think it's a really good point. It's a really good question. It's something I'm in my 40s, and I'm still working on trying to find balance in my life. When you don't have that automatic sort of family or something that's really going to make you do it. So.
You need a hobby.
Exercise is amazing.
Exercise is good.
Yeah.
Like
Exercise is
running,
definitely
cycling is amazing because it completely gets you out of the work mode and you're not
Right.
thinking, and then you come back.
Yeah.
And there are days where I often have like 4 or 5 hours of productive work after.
Yeah.
I might not do much in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but it's amazing after. And the second thing I try to do is I try to catch up with friends for
Exactly.
dinner
That's what I
and
do.
stuff.
Yeah.
That is amazing too. So you get like a 3-4 hour break,
Right.
and then you
Exactly.
come back, finish up.
Especially if when you make an appointment with someone, you have a time frame.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right.
You're like, I have to go. I'm
Can't let them
actually.
down, right?
Is it next week? Next week I'm taking 2 half-days off
What?
to do some knitting work. It's in the calendar.
It's not. I don't see she knitting. Yeah,
We don't approve vacation time. We're like, oh look, everybody's off for Christmas. Whoops.
Whoops, you just got the
That's
pager.
essentially like you can't underestimate the power of downtime for problem solving.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or a second set of eyes.
we had like this massive crisis about 18 months ago. Basically, we had like a problem with the numbers and we didn't know what was causing it. We had a data problem. And basically it was...
Oh, sure. Blame it on me.
Oh, it's totally your fault.
Data problem.
No.
I know.
Not your fault. It was before we had... Actually, it turns out to be a configuration problem. That's beside the point. We thought that, because we do crash reporting, we thought that Firefox 364 had this massive spike in crashes. And we were trying to account for it. We literally had like 10 of the crashes in the day before. So we had spent a lot of time as a group at the system trying to find where the problem was. 2 weeks. Like 10 people working on it pretty much night and day for 2 weeks. That's all we did. And then I got really pissed off and took a day off and went to a horse show. And I was standing in the middle of the field. I knew the answer. It just popped into my head because I was not thinking about it. My subconscious went, "Hey, this is the answer to this problem." I went home and I filed it back. I'm like, "Arvind, it's this." Da, da, da. And he's like, "No, it can't possibly." I'm like, "Check it. I'm absolutely 100% sure. Look in the logs and you're going to see this." And it was almost like it was weird because it was like psychic. Your intuition's really powerful, and you can't do that when you're in it. You have to get away from it.
I'm actually talking about that later.
Oh, awesome.
I'll be talking about intuition, a little bit of intuition later. But I mean, it's so interesting, right? Like the way to go faster is sometimes somebody to step back.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, we're in break time now, so, you know, whatever you guys want to do.
We're 1 minute in break time.
What did you say, Mark?
So precise.
He's doing
Yeah, second kid.
Yay!